Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At Turnkey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, Turnkey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. Turnkey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Coming up today on the Nice Guys on Business.
The more difficult time to be resilient is when you are winning, because there's a temptation to get comfortable. There's a temptation to kind of kick your legs up and look in the mirror and beat your chest about how good and how great you are. That's actually where we have to stay on our square the most, right? But these habits that I attempt, these 8 habits that, some of us already, operate on. These are new things that need to be fine-tuned. But, when you talk about a positive attitude, when you talk about our work ethic, when you talk about dogged determination, when you talk about what it means to be vulnerable as leaders, our network and our relationships, the ability to stay focused. And for me, at the heart of what's been important throughout my journey of resilience has been the importance of faith.
Locally sourced, organic, gluten-free, and topic to table. It's the Nice Guys on Business podcast. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, so nice guy community. Today's guest is Dr. Lamell McMorris. He's the force at the crossroads of business, advocacy, and public policy. He's also the author and founder of Phase 2 Consulting, guiding top leaders to use their influence for good, from negotiating major sports union deals to redefining, in his childhood neighborhood. He's really working on that. Lamell's impact is wide and it's deep. He's held executive roles, built a successful sports agency, and serves on boards like the Urban League and the PGA Reach. Lamell is on a mission to turn success into significance. I'm excited to chat with him today for the first time in 1,600 and some odd episodes. Welcome, Lamell, to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
It is awesome to be here. Thank you very much for having me. This is exciting.
And I got to say, Lamell, the studio that you are sitting in right where you are, not often has somebody brought that game to my game. So
let me tell you, I'm a rookie. I'm a rookie at this, and launching the Power to Persist podcast, and the premise is, hey, if I'm going to have you on to talk about your resilient journey on the Power to Persist podcast, I wanted to do it in a place authentically where mine started. So I'm literally talking to you from the south side of Chicago in Woodlawn, in the neighborhood, and my childhood home in the basement. My mom, I just saw her before we went live. She's right upstairs. I'm literally in the basement of my childhood home. So this is a full circle moment.
How great is that to have not only at your youth and your young age, Lamell, to have your mom still with you in life. My mom, I celebrate with my mom just recently her 92nd birthday, and we're taking her to Hawaii in October, and we're very excited to be able to do that.
I love it. I love it. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Thanks. And health and happiness to your mom, and a long, prosperous life for her as well. So let's talk about this. How does one go from being a participant to significance? Is it a mindset thing, or is it something else, Lamell?
It's definitely a shift. I think as an entrepreneur, it is natural, healthy, for, if you will, in the first phase of our journey in our lives, the point is, hey, I need to stay in business. Hey, I need to make money. Hey, I've got to sustain. How do I figure out how to grow? How do I figure out how to scale? But then there's a shift from success financially and from growth to significance. And I would say that I'm in that second phase of, being able to make money and do good. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can do both at the same time.
I love that, and that's a perfect answer, and it leads me quite nicely into this. I remember early on when we started our production business, anybody with
Yes.
a checkbook was a client because look, you
Yes.
needed to grease the wheels of progress and success, and the only way to do that was to make sure you were making payroll. And I've
Yes.
realized that that is really not a great way to grow a business. And it took a couple of years. I've been self-employed for 40 years, and fortunately, only two of those have been big careers for me, a 30-year career and then the last 10 years in this production business. And it was the
Yes.
same thing with that business early on. Anybody that had a check, I would be there. And
Yeah.
I realized that the pain in the butt clients were the ones that were they wrote the check, but I'm like, I'm gonna have to bend a little bit of things here going on to make it happen.
Yeah.
How have you evolved beyond that? Anybody with a checkbook becomes a client. How have you evolved beyond that?
So, I try to explain to people that in all of our lives, there's a line literally from where I'm talking to you right now on the south side of Chicago in my childhood home to everything that I'm doing today. The line may not necessarily be straight, but
Hmm.
there is a line. And that line for me, that connective tissue is centered around advocacy. I've always been attracted as a kid growing up in Chicago to public policy and leaders of influence and this sense of advocacy. I am very fortunate in that the line from my childhood to what I do today, this sense of advocacy still exists. Look, before I got on the line with you here today, I was on the phone. I won't say with a major Fortune, I won't say exactly who it was, but
Yeah.
let's say a major Fortune 500 client of mine that's in the telecom space. And the conversation was not, what legislation we were trying to move, how we were getting ready to shift winds here. It was about the good that we can do on behalf of their customers and the communities where they serve. And I've been fortunate to be able to align my values, my passion, and my advocacy with business interests. And that's our sweet spot at phase two.
All right, so let's talk about the sweet spot for a second. You talk about
Yeah.
advocacy. Who are you advocating for? Because it just sounded like with that Fortune 500 company, you were advocating for the customer. And is it always about the customer? Is it sometimes about the internal team? It's sometimes about management. Who do you advocate for? Or who do you love advocating for?
Well, the best advocacy, again, consistent with my values and where I'm from, are always for customers and clients. The best end goal for me is those interests in business where they put their customers and clients first.
Hmm.
And when you talk about resiliency and the power to persist and being able to put forth a platform on resilience, there is resilience in energy. We can talk about sustainable communities. There is resilience and positive advocacy and outcomes when you talk in the telecom space. How do we get broadband and expand our services for all communities, both rural and urban? And especially when you talk about financial services, how do we make families
Hmm.
and put families in positions and communities in positions where they get the financial literacy and wherewithal to sustain and invest and participate and have healthy families and communities for long periods of time.
That is a big amen, first of all. So let's start there. That is an
Yes,
amen.
yes.
The thing that I find interesting is that advocacy, and I'm just realizing this now. I don't know why it's taken me 61 years to figure this out, but just now in this conversation,
Yes,
advocacy means different things for different people. Whoever's
it
on the
does.
receiving end of that of an advocate doing their work. If you're in a challenged socioeconomic world, it could mean just opening up opportunity for credit for someone. If you're in the world of telecom, it could mean helping someone communicate in an environment or geography that they have never been able to communicate before just by putting cell towers or 5G. Is there a preferred? It sounds like you've mentioned this a couple of times already in the interview, South Side of Chicago. I'm assuming there's a passion, and what drives you and what's in your heart is helping give back or being an advocate for those that are in those neighborhoods in South Side of Chicago. Is that fair?
Yeah, no doubt about it. But I believe that everyone deserves an advocate, and everyone deserves the opportunity for folks to petition on their behalf. It just so happens
Right.
because of where I'm from, and the issues. And my neighbors, as I was, pulling up to get on to the house to get on with you, the small business owners, the underserved community, the ability to fight for equal housing, equality in education, and for sustainable jobs in my communities are probably where my heart and values align. And it just so happens that the clients that I represent from a Fortune 500 standpoint are aligned with me in that regard. But you're right. Everyone sees advocacy and everyone has the right to define that for themselves. It just so happens that my values were born literally from this place where we're having the conversation today.
Doing well by doing good.
Yes.
That's an environment that is sound in the Fortune 500 ecosystem somewhere along there. They love that. They love to do that. How much of this is done, you think, from that perspective, from upper management in a Fortune 500 company that may not necessarily know the South Side of Chicago and what you have come from? How much of it is selling them on the idea, and how much of it is it them really wanting to serve? Do you feel like you're getting a lot of positive response from upper management in those organizations?
I wish I could talk about some of the details and the intricacies of the work of some of my clients, but I can tell you and your listeners, you would probably be very surprised where literally not just a new phenomenon, but for decades and in some instances centuries, business interests have aligned with doing well in the communities where they serve. Sometimes not always, high profile, big media campaigns, but quietly doing the work of good. And again, as I stated earlier, making money and doing good do not have to necessarily be exclusive. You can do both at the same time. And I found that, and I've actually been pleasantly surprised that, folks literally are trying to do the right thing. And as you stated earlier, in many cases, you say tomato, I say tomato. That's where the rub comes in, how we define what doing good is. But at the heart of it, at the essence of it, and it is, what I try to put forth in the book. At the heart of it, these habits that I'm attempting to put forth in the Power to Persist, make us individually and collectively more resilient.
Well, let's talk just for a moment about the book, because and we'll keep coming back to it, because I know that is a major purpose for having you here on the show, to talk about the book and but to know the man is to know the book, right?
So, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
There's no doubt. So if we talk about, you've mentioned advocacy a couple of times, and I have as well, because that's a key word that comes back to you, Lamell, a number of times, and you also talk about persistence and the power to persist. What is the connection between persistence and advocacy? Or maybe there are two separate ideas. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, these are, the undercurrent, if you will, of advocacy and consistent persistence are these habits of how we can achieve a level of resilience. By the way, not just in the wake of adversity and headwinds, but also, when we achieve victory and success. Probably the more difficult time to be resilient is when you are winning, because there's a temptation to get comfortable. There's a temptation to kind of kick your legs up and look in the mirror and beat your chest about how good and how great you are. That's actually where we have to stay on our square the most, right? But these habits that I attempt, these 8 habits that, some of us already, operate on. These are new things that need to be fine-tuned. But, when you talk about a positive attitude, when you talk about our work ethic, when you talk about dogged determination, when you talk about what it means to be vulnerable as leaders, our network and our relationships, the ability to stay focused. And for me, at the heart of what's been important throughout my journey of resilience has been the importance of faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just did cover, what's interesting about it is I was going to ask you about some of those 8 transformative habits that you talk about in the book, and you just went through a number of those. I think about back in 2015, I wrote a book called Nice Guys Finish First, and it's talking about the whole idea of doing well by doing good. And
Yes.
nice guys generally return their communications, have a good network. They build a strong communication bond with people that are in their network. They're on time all the time. They
Yeah.
show up. They're there. They're ready to play the game, and they're ready to do it and play hard.
Yeah.
And it just the things that people kind of put off to the side when they say, okay, well, tell me what the secret of success. Well, if I said the secret of success is build good relationships, show up on time, and communicate effectively with the people that are in your life, and somebody would say, well, duh, we've heard that a million times. Yeah,
Right.
but until
Right.
you do those things, you can't be
Right.
successful.
Right. Right. You
And
know,
that's similar to your 8 habits that you have there.
yeah, and listen, I candidly admit some days I'm doing these better than others,
Of
right?
course, you're human.
Yeah, we're all, it's a constant journey. And I love the title Nice Guys Finish First, because I remember a point in my journey where I thought, being quote unquote, at least I think I'm nice. Maybe not everybody else may not think I'm nice, but
I think you are.
there's a part of my journey where I thought that, my goodness, I'm coming in last every time here. Why am I behind? Whether it was, by the way, whether it was business related or even personally, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Especially in college, as a college student, I wasn't like the cool kid. So I especially thought I finished last, in comparison to others. But I think in the end, when you inhabit certain principles and certain values, I think that outlasts. You talk about resilience, being nice, the cool, the folks that don't necessarily follow the rules, it looks good initially, but it's really fleeting. Those core competencies, those habits that we do perpetually, and being nice and doing the right thing tends to outlast.
I recall a quote from the book, and I said this many times on the show. So, pardon me, nice guy community, if you've heard this a million times. But on chapter 1 of the book, I quote Gary Shandling. He says something like, "If nice guys if nice guys finish first, hold on a second. If you don't think nice guys finish first, you don't know where the finish line is." And
Wow, I
and part
love
of it
that.
is like that hit me really hard because I'm like, yeah, people that are measuring success by only dollars and not relationships or
I
good
love
habits
that.
or so for me, I feel like that's the way for me to live a happy, sustainable, persistent, consistent life over and over again is by being a nice guy. And nice is not maybe in corporate America, maybe nice sometimes is perceived as a sign of weakness. I look
Yeah.
at it as like, well, I can put my head on the pillow at night feeling good about what I've accomplished in the day, even if I did leave some money on the table or a client that has a check, but I wasn't willing to sign up because that doesn't fit into our culture.
I'm so glad that you went there, because there is a tendency to equate being nice with weakness, but it's actually by taking the higher ground and doing the right thing, that's actually more difficult and challenging to sustain than being off-putting and doing wrong consistently. I'm reminded of the Dr. King. Everyone quotes Dr. King with a lot of powerful quotes, but it's connected actually to this conversation, because a wise person told me it's hard to lead from behind. It's hard to lead from the rear. It's hard to lead when you're the bad person. It's hard to lead when you're the evil. It's hard to lead when you got the bad attitude. You kind of need to
Right.
embody some things that allow you to be in front and model certain behavior. But Dr. King said something very important. He said everyone can lead because everyone can serve, right? There's something about servant leadership that propels you to the front of the crowd rather than the rear of the crowd. And I think that's what you talk about in your book. And I think these are some of the habits in the power to persist that undergird, this resilient journey of, there's some things that and some ways that we need to be if we really want to truly and authentically lead.
So Lamell wrote the book. It's called The Power to Persist. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes so you have access
Thank
to
you.
the book. And tell me about the makeup of the book. Is it stories about you taking your journey and then you're applying lessons learned through the way, or tell us about how the book is put together?
I really love that question, and I'll right now, model one of the habits in the book with a level of vulnerability. when I sought out, to write this book about resilience, and it's kind of self-help. I thought I could just, write 8 habits that you would embody, and that would be great. So in the publishing, where I'm a new author, you have to submit like half your book to your publisher. So I go on, I'm real proud. I submit the first half of the book to my publisher, and she pushes it right back to me, and she says, no, if people don't see your resilient journey and can feel your authentic journey in this book, then it won't resonate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't know that I had to tell a little bit, some things that I've never divulged, some stories and instances about my career as an entrepreneur, and in business, and my journey, even from my childhood. I didn't know that I had to go there, frankly. But yes, the book lifts up 8 habits that I talked about earlier. And yes, I share some, they say you can't have a testimony unless you've been tested. So I've got a few stories that I rarely have talked about ever before. And then I lift up some individuals who are both famous and those that you don't know. Because, it's not just the sports hero or the business mogul. It's the lady who I just passed, the mom down the street, who was running to pick up her kids from daycare, right? Who's trying to, drive a Uber,
right,
and do that. That's a resilient. It's the shop owner that I just passed by a few minutes ago. That's a resilient journey too. So I talk a little bit about everyone and all those examples, if you will, of resilience.
I share very early on with my clients in the podcast production business the importance of that welcome episode, and that welcoming episode is the one that they share. Yeah, who's in their audience and the market, and maybe some offers that they have. But I said the important thing is you got to share your story, because when somebody clicks on episode number 1, they don't want you to get right into lessons learned along the way. They want to know how can they relate to you from the mistakes that you've made, and they don't want to hear about your successes. They want to hear about your failures. Everybody loves that.
Yeah, admittedly, I'll tell you, I didn't realize that, right? I didn't know it, but I get it now. And when I had to like put the mirror up and think about, like, hey, you're inspired by hearing about everyone's journey, the ups and the downs. So why don't you think others would be perhaps inspired by yours? And that was also the impetus for the podcast, right? I've had the wonderful opportunity to meet so many business leaders and influencers, et cetera. And, like you, why not create a forum where we talk about their resilient journeys as well, and their stories, and people can be inspired and learn from them as well.
I want to go off to a slight tangent on this, because I know that the book is your work, and your book is important. It's your journey. Before the journey into book writing, there was the journey of Lamell as a kid. So I'm curious, early on, and we've talked about your mom in other conversations, and earlier today as well, we talked about your mom. Tell me about her influence in your life, and maybe anybody else that played a role in helping shape who Lamell is today.
Well, she was the chief and the first example of what it means to be resilient, to be a single mom here on the south side of Chicago, and doing whatever she needed to do, working 2 and 3 jobs. My mom, I talk about work ethic in the book as one of the habits of being on a resilient journey. And my mom modeled that for me, so, if I work hard, if I have a good work ethic, it is because of what I saw my mom do. She was always, by the way, working, but always smiling, always having a good time, able to, do church, community, and work, and take care of a family at the same time. And so, I proudly dedicate this book to her, because she was the first model and example of what it means to be on a resilient journey.
Well, again, amen to having her in your life still, and it's so impactful to be able to have someone that is a mature guy still have that relationship with his mom, as I do also, single mom also, raised in Baltimore, in a community of very supportive community, but one where not many of my friends' parents were divorced. So for me, it was I felt like I was a latchkey kid. My mom was working. I came home and I watched cartoons on the television till my brother got home. And it was a challenging upbringing, but nothing near what approaches, it sounds like from our previous conversation, what you had to endure as a child in Chicago. But it's awesome to know your story.
Our journeys are very similar. I was a latchkey kid, and I think if there is, one of the messages for young people, especially, that I would like them to take from this book is that, our circumstances, again, no matter where you live and where you come from, they don't have to determine the outcome of our lives. That there's some habits and things that we can be and how we can conduct ourselves to determine a different and write our own narrative.
So the book comes out on September 23rd. You're listening to this in the beginning of September, Nice Guy Community. Go ahead and click the link in the show notes. You know where to get that. The Power to Persist, 8 Simple Habits to Build Lifelong Resilience. It's right there. It's pre-order right now. But if you're listening to this after the 23rd of September or thereabouts, in case Amazon is held up for any reason, you want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. So we have a book that's planning on coming out September 23rd. If for some reason it's not out yet and you're listening to this after the 23rd, just go ahead and purchase the pre-order as well. Let's bump Lamell up to bestseller status. I'm sure that would be appreciated as well.
Thank you, my friend.
Lamell, anything that I should be asking you that I'm not asking? I feel like our time has come and gone quickly. I do want to say one thing before you sure. Giving you the final word. I would love it, love it if we had an opportunity to do this again after the book comes out and you get some feedback, because I know that it's going to be very positive feedback after you have your podcast out and about for dozens of episodes, and you can say, hey, I got 100 of these episodes under my belt. I want to get you back on and see what has happened in your life that has transpired from where we are today as of the recording of this.
I would be phenomenally honored. I can't wait to come back. And I thank you for the invitation. I think if there was a final word that I would have for your listeners, it is just an acknowledgement for everyone. Sometimes the journey is tough as a business owner, as someone who works in corporate America, and trying to balance both personal and professional career and, how we conduct and live ourselves. Just an acknowledgement that we're all on this journey trying to figure it out together. I'm literally asking everyone to not, get this book and think that this is, the gospel and it's going to set us all free. But it is an acknowledgement that we're going on this resilient journey together, and we're constantly growing, constantly getting better. And this is just one contribution to help us lead that lifelong resilience.
Oh, awesome. Well, Lamell, I so appreciate you being here. Hey, I didn't even realize it. I very much appreciate the boombox you have behind you also.
Let me tell you, that thing is one of the most exciting things. Like, literally, I'm surprised I didn't have it on when we first got on. Like I'm, take me back. Literally, you can hit a rewind button on the cassette deck back there. Sometimes, you just want to go back to the good old days.
I started in 1984 as a DJ, and I started with records, moved on to cassettes. So I'm familiar with the cassette era for a long time. On to CDs, then MP3s, then computers, MP3s, and now streaming audio.
Yes, sir, brother. Yes, sir. You've seen the whole journey.
and then coming back now, everybody's back into vinyl again, which is so interesting to be able.
And I'm one of those folks. I try to pick up a vinyl every chance I get.
Nice. Well, Lamell, thanks for being here and on the show.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
Hey, Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice or the power of persistence. Again, special thanks to Lamell. All of his information, including access to the book, right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
Thanks for listening to the Nice Guys on Business. Please go to patreon.com/niceguys. And for as little as $1 a month, you can help support this show. You remember that thing down in Panama, right? Come on, you owe them.